what is spiritual intelligence, and then we'll get into, why it is important, why it is relevant.
There are a lot of academic definitions of spiritual intelligence, but when I wrote the book, I actually settled out on a really simple, intuitive one, which is the ability of human consciousness, ordinary mind, ordinary awareness to connect with cosmic consciousness, the consciousness of the universe. And we know we live in these great universal information fields. We know that the brain functions much more like a receiver, a transceiver of that cosmic consciousness, those information fields, and then a projector of them into material reality. And so some people pay attention to developing the skill of spiritual intelligence, just like you develop your emotional intelligence, so you'd sharpen your mind and your IQ. You can actually develop spiritual intelligence and you can facilitate that connection of individual intelligence to universal intelligence. And it works both ways. Spiritual intelligence produces enormous upgrades in health. I mentioned drops in cortisol.
Mm.
That's one thing we measure. In some studies, a 40% drop in cortisol. So massive drops in cortisol. In other studies, a 100% rise in immune markers. So your health gets better. One lady who took a course on spiritual intelligence I teach. It's called The Short Path to Oneness. It's a year-long course. And she came in, she had a massive tumor in her abdomen. Her heart was so congested, only 30% of the blood was getting through it, that should have been getting through it. She just began to meditate, focused on her spiritual intelligence. That tumor went away, and within a few
Wow.
weeks, she had full function, 100% blood flow through her heart. So there are all kinds of physical benefits you get. And again, that longevity study showing a 24-year longevity difference, 24 years more of healthy life. So is it a magical panacea? No. But is it going to nudge you in the direction of wellness? Absolutely. And the last thing I'll mention is in chapter 2 of Spiritual Intelligence, I cover the studies on Alzheimer's and dementia and cognitive decline, and they are just stunning,
Mm.
showing that Alzheimer's patients and the Alzheimer's brains shrink up to 70% before they die. If you look at the post-mortem images post-mortem of a normal brain and an Alzheimer's brain is like tiny little thing rattling around in that skull
Mm.
because it shrunk so much. And they found in this research that as people meditated using these techniques that I'm recommending in the book, their brains literally stopped shrinking, and those Alzheimer's patients' brains began to grow again and their cognitive function improved. So it is radically transformative of your health.
You've gone through a lot of studies. I think there's like 400 studies in your book, and it's really, I think it's the book that I've read on spirituality with the most science in it. And yet it's from kind of an unusual angle. I guess if we are going to find science on spirituality, it would be talking about the brain, which you've done. So perhaps you could just explain this about the how we need to work on the brain, what we're actually doing in terms of like the hardware and the software, and in terms of what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, so there's hardware and there's software. And unless you turn on the hardware and develop the hardware, you can't run the software. And so the software is compassion, joy, inner peace, altruism, optimism, awe. All the positive emotions are mediated, but they're mediated by hardware. So that's the big exciting discovery here is we all have these circuits, we can grow them extremely quickly. They're really active. Certain ones of them are really active
Hmm.
in monks and nuns, others are really inactive, like the default mode network, that are very active in depressed people. And they're two sides of the same coin. In fact, one of my colleagues that I quote in the book says that depression and spirituality are two sides of the same coin. They use the same parts of the brain. In depression, those parts are hyperactive. In meditation, they're asleep.
Yes. Yes. So we can all do this. We can all acquire this. In fact, we all have spiritual intelligence, I think. It's just a scale, isn't it? And we're trying to move up the scale. And but what's interesting, one thing I read which was very interesting is just one meditation session produces changes in the brain. It's not like you have to do this for years, but even as soon as you start, you actually get a benefit from it. Now, you might not feel that benefit, but there is a measurable benefit. So that's pretty incredible. And like you say, if you're comparing this to like working out, going to the gym, it seems as though we can progress faster with all of this kind of work, this mind work, than we can with actual working on our bodies. It's
Yeah,
much
our
more
brains
receptive.
respond very, very quickly to being worked out. Yeah, and that study that's from my colleague Andrew Newberg, who wrote a book called How Enlightenment Changes Your Brain.
So you were
Somebody,
guided towards this. So what you're saying,
yeah,
we're not really talking about religion, I don't think. You're
no.
talking about you're guided towards this experience, which couldn't have just been a coincidence. It was like it's because we're in this intelligent universe.
I mean, I flipped up the Bible at random, this huge thing, and that was what my eyes saw. I mean, the universe has so much love and benevolence and guidance for us. Now, I don't find in meditation a personal God. So what I find is much more what the Buddhists describe and the Vedanta tradition describes, which is an intelligent universe.
But then at the same time, it's like we need the dark to appreciate the light. We actually need this polarity to actually, understand the world.
They're creating contrast, and so that contrast lets us see the light. And also, a lot of these struggles do result in something later on, like, for example, the war in Ukraine. I mean, horrendous war should never have happened. It's just unconscionable. And yet, if you look at countries that emerge from wars, I mean, the United States, where I spend most of my time, is emerged from a war with its colonial overlord, Great Britain. So that struggle forges the nation, and Germany was forged in struggle, and even the United Kingdom was forged in enormous struggles. You look at the countries that are the most peaceful nowadays, and in the Global Happiness Index, and the last chapter of Spiritual Intelligence, I talk about global changes that we can expect in the next 10, 20 years
Hmm.
as a result of spiritual intelligence. But the countries that are always at the top of the global happiness rankings are the Nordic countries, Finland, Sweden, Denmark, Norway. And so I've grown up, and we've all grown up, and our parents and grandparents grew up with these happy Nordic people. We just knew the Nordic people were happy. Now that we can measure it with science, we know for a fact that they are the world's happiest people. Go back just to 1850, or in fact, watch a series called 1864, and you will find that those Nordic people were the most genocidal, bloodthirsty savages you can imagine.
Thank you so much, Dawson Church. Thanks for the work you're doing in the world. Thanks for sharing today, and thanks for writing this great book.
Oh, it's such a joy. I'm equally grateful for you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, listener and viewer. My name is Lloyd Burrell from electricsense.com. Until next time, have a great day. Thanks so much. Take care. Bye bye.